Hello. Today we're going to be talking about frames and objects in InDesign. I've got a basic worksheet for you with 9 different exercises that we're going to go through today. Some of these are going to be repeating concepts that we've already covered on the text worksheet, but now we're just going to be applying those to objects. For example, number 1, image on an elliptical frame. We're going to go back to our frame tool that we've already discussed in other videos, and instead we're going to switch to our ellipse frame tool. The idea behind this is I genuinely want you to see how you can use an ellipsed frame in order to create images in other shapes other than just a traditional rectangle or square that they come in as. When you put in your ellipse frame, you can just click and drag like I did to get an oval, or if you hold down your shift key on your keyboard, you can get a perfect circle frame. You got to make sure you hold the shift down the whole time though. Once you have the frame, you can add your images into the frame in multiple ways. One, you can say File, Place, or you can drag and drop from your image off maybe your desktop or out of your files, wherever it is that you prefer. I'm going to use a picture of my puppy just to give us an idea of what we're doing. So you see I just dragged and dropped. Again, the other way to do that is to say File and place an image. Remember that when you're placing images, that they're going to come in at full size inside the frame. And in order to make this work, you have to right click and say fitting, and you have some choices here. You can fill the frame proportionately. You can fill the content proportionately, which means it's going to meet the size of the frame, which can warp your images. So you want to be very cognizant of which one you're choosing. You can use content aware fit, which is going to let the program determine what it thinks centered and filled should look like. This can be really great depending on the subject matter, and sometimes it's a little off. So I think that's a hit or miss in my opinion. You also can fit your frame to your content, and I'm going to demonstrate this really quickly. By doing that, my frame has now increased size to meet the image that I had, but that's not what I'm going to do. So for today, I'm going to say fill frame proportionately. I would strongly recommend you kind of play with these options and try each one out so you can see what they do individually. That looks great. Once she's in there, I have this circle here that allows me to adjust the image and it just flips to a hand tool. If you can see, there's a blue bounding box now indicating where the boundary of that image is. One of the things you have to watch is that it can go outside of your frame and then show some white areas or some see-through areas of that frame. For number 2, I'm just going to recycle this same image and just make a copy of it. Remember that making a copy of an image in this is either you can do copy and paste, but my preferred method is holding down the Alt key and just dragging out a copy. That feels a lot more efficient to me. Stroke on a frame. So essentially what we're going to be doing is just adding a stroke around our frame, but I don't want to just add a basic stroke. I'm in my appearance panel over here, and I'm just going to turn my stroke on and with a color, and I'm going to make sure I choose a color, and it doesn't matter. We have swatches here. You can set the color over in the toolbar depending on what it is you want. It's going to default to just a 1-point basic stroke, but I do want to show you have some other choices. By hitting the word stroke, which is underlined, in any Adobe program, something that's underlined indicates that there's more options. I have some other choices. I can come down and choose different types, so I could do maybe a dotted stroke, and as I turn up the weight of that stroke, I'm going to get bigger designs. The other thing that I have the ability to do is I can change the stroke alignment. So right now it is centered along the path of my stroke. However, I can make it go to the inside, or I can make it go to the outside. So depending on the way you want your stroke aligned, you do have some choices here. Again, you can change your weight here. You can also change the scale here, and you can also change the alignment. Now, because this is a circle image, it's not going to do what we need it to do, but you do have some start and stop options as well. So we're just going to put any type of stroke on here. I would like you to go open up the stroke panel and do choose some other setting options just so I know that you have the ability to do that. All right, number 3, a new shaped frame. One of the things that we have the option of in this program is the direct select tool. And then we also have some pen tool options that we can use. So one of the things that I sometimes need to do is maybe create a frame that isn't either one of my presets of rectangle, ellipse, or polygon. I can use a basic frame like I've got here, and I can make adjustments to it. I can start with the pen tool, for example, and if you'll notice, I get my pen tool behavior actions that's going to show me when I hover over different areas that it's going to give me choices. So for example, I can click and add an anchor point on my frame, and I can also remove that anchor point. I also can use my convert direction point tool, which is the same tool as the anchor point tool in Illustrator, to pull curves on my frame. So if I have maybe like this square here and I actually did not want to have a square, maybe I wanted to have a arched option, I have that ability to then adjust my frame here and the handles, which works exactly the same way as it did in Illustrator. Only major difference is this is not a drawing program, so we want to keep that in mind. But we still get some options here, like this is kind of giving me some guiding bars that I can use to rearrange and make sure I'm keeping my handlebars, for example, centered. We also, once you have this, you can insert an image in here just the exact same way that we did on the other two. So again, I can pull this image that I'm using for this exercise and insert this image into a different style frame. I'm going to just keep recycling this image, and I'm going to change the image shape this time. So when I have an image that I am using, I can change the frame like I did, but I also can just change the image once that image has been placed into my program. So one of the things I like to kind of show is when you're using the direct select, okay? When you're using the direct select, you not only can change the frame, but you can change the location of the image. And I want to show you what I mean by that. So if I take this image and I'm using my direct select tool, which is A on my keyboard, I also can manipulate the shape here without moving the frame. So that tool also lets you kind of move things around like the hand tool does with the selection tool. So that's always a nice thing, so you don't have to switch tools to move your object. I also have the ability to use that pen tool again. However, you do have to make sure that you're on the object and not still manipulating the frame. So I can once again change and adjust this image depending on the type of shape of the picture I want. So you can change the image shape either before you put an image in or after. For transparency on an image, this is the same type of transparency options that we've done in other things. It appears on our appearance panel once you have your image selected, and we're just going to change opacity. Opacity and transparency are the exact same thing, and I can just turn that down. This can come in beneficial in different types of designs. Sometimes I take an image and will turn the transparency down and make it quite large in a design. I use this also for textures and patterns if I'm just trying to add something a little extra to my design. Tint on an image. This image I have provided for you in the classroom so that you have an image that has a transparent background on it to work with. When we're putting a tint on an image, we do have to open our swatches panel. Again, we're under color, and we have the swatches panel open. I already have that on my minimized toolbar over here, or my panels bar, excuse me. So I was able to go here, but just remember that the panels in InDesign are categorized a little bit more than they are in Photoshop or Illustrator. For this, all I need to do is just select a color. You need to make sure that you are on the fill and not the stroke like I was. And all I'm going to do is once I have that selected, I'm just going to adjust the tint of it. And what this is going to allow me to do, I apologize, I think I had it not selected. What it's going to let me do is if I wanted to add a tinted color to my image without doing a separate shape, I have this ability to then tint the background. If I put a tint on this image, for example, it's not going to show you that image tint or that color behind because the image is filling up the entire surface and I wouldn't be able to see that. So this is only really something you can do with a transparent background. Now you can put an object in that's just a basic shape and change the tint as well this way. But remember, when we're talking about tint, this only changes how much of the color is visible. If you want things to be see-through, you have to change the opacity itself. So that's kind of an important distinction to remember. But one of the things I like to stress is that remember that InDesign is not a photo editing software. If you want to adjust the colors inside of an image, don't put an opacity fill or with a tint adjustment. Instead, you want to edit the photograph in Photoshop and then reinsert it. Okay. I'm going to keep using my images that I've been using. That way I'm not pulling more images in. And I'm going to talk about doing object styles and effects on shapes. And this is true for images. This is true for text. This is really anything in the program works the same way, but I want you to have the ability to practice. And we are going to learn how to save object styles. So for this, we're going to go the same way. You have two options to add effects. You can go to Window, Effects, and pull up in the Effects panel where you can choose between the object, the stroke, and the fill. Or under the Appearance panel, you can go to the FX here and then choose Drop Shadow for this exercise that we're doing. Please remember that your effects measurements are going to be based off of the ruler measurements. So if you decide to change this to inches or pixels, this offset number, which is what we're going to adjust to change how far our shadow is from our object, is going to be set based on that measurement. I've left mine to the default, which is picas. So this is a measurement of 0 pica 7. So I'm actually going to reduce this because I always like my shadows to be a little bit closer to my objects. Because I'm not reading this, I can get a little bit more space from my object. The further your shadow is away from your object, the more it's going to look like it's floating. So that's a stylistic option in my opinion. Your size is going to change how kind of blurred that is. So again, that's a stylistic choice in my opinion. You also can change the color up here at any point, though I like to leave mine on black. Once you've got your shadow put in the way you like, you can just say okay. I'm going to create an object style, however, and I want to save that object style. When we're creating an object style, I'm just going to pull any kind of basic option that I can mess with. I'm going to put a drop shadow on, for example, again, and remember it defaults back to the original setting. So you'll notice even though I changed it on this image of the puppy, it automatically put it back to the original settings. This is why creating object styles is very beneficial. While I'm in the effects panel, I'm going to go ahead and add a few other effects just so that we have other effects to work with. I've added a bevel and an emboss, for example, and I can adjust this as well, and I can decrease the size, I can change and soften that up, I can change the depth. I have lots of choices here. I also am going to go ahead and add a stroke just so you can see other options outside of just the basic options in the effects panel. So I'm going to add a stroke here. This light blue color is great. And then I'm going to change to the Japanese dots, which is my personal favorite stroke, and make that nice and big and bold. And I'm going to align that to the outside. Once I have my effects, maybe this is a style I plan on using all throughout my document. That took me several minutes to put all of those effects on, and that feels like almost a waste of time if I'm going to be doing this repeatedly. So rather than repeatedly adding it to every single object I want to use the same style on, I'm going to go to Window, Styles, Object Styles. And again, mine's embedded here in my collapsed panel. Once this panel is open, I can come down here and I can create a new style. And it's going to default it to Object Style 1. For this exercise, I'm going to change it to my name so that I can see that it's yours. I'm going to click over here to stroke, and I want you to see that there is the tint, the type, and the weight of my stroke that I put on. I'm going to take a screenshot of this because I want you to show me that you've saved your object style. And then I'm going to say okay. Once I have my screenshot, for me on a Mac, it's Command-Shift-4. For you on a Windows, you're going to use the snipping tool or Command-Shift-S, or on a Chromebook, I believe it is the Window F7 command. I can delete this, and my layer style, or excuse me, my object style is still there. Again, I'm going to take this image and I'm going to continue using it repeatedly. And now when I click on the Scales object style that I put up here, it's going to put that object style back on just like I had it before, which is really neat. It even changes the fill. Because I've got an image here, you can't see that fill unless I move it away. Once you're done with getting your object styles, don't forget to place your screenshot so that I can see how you intended or how you saved your object style. Once you're done placing your, which for some reason isn't, oh, I'm on the wrong file. Once you're done placing your object style, remember that you have the ability to do the free transform in order to get that to the size you need to fill this box. That is E on your keyboard. And I'm going to zoom out. I love the Command 0 command, which lets me go full screen. And then again, free transform on my keyboard is E. I'm holding down my Shift key to keep that in proportion so that I don't distort my image. I've even said in the box that I need a screenshot. Remember that to save this and turn it in, you do need to say File, Export, and choose the Adobe Print command. I also would like for you to save it as an INDD file so that we can have both. For this, we're going to save this as last name, first name, your period, and then frames and objects. That's all I've got for this exercise. Hopefully you learned something new, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.